As we've been reporting, the A word, abortion, is on a lot of people's lips here in Houston. Activists on both sides of this volatile issue have been squaring off inside, or rather outside, abortion clinics. Arrests have been made, more seem likely. Across from the Astrodome, a billboard proclaims 71% of the Republican Party is in favor of abortion rights, while the GOP platform is staunchly anti-abortion. No less a personage than the First Lady has described abortion as a personal decision. The man in charge of the Republican convention denies the Bush administration wants it both ways.
Is the Republican Party trying to have it both ways on abortion? I don't think so. I really think this is a very personal, a very sensitive issue. It is difficult to deal with in a political campaign. We recognized starting years ago, Lee Atwater and President Bush talked about this was going to be a party with a big tent. We want to include views on this issue from different perspectives. We're going to continue to do that over the course of the week.
Joining me now, two Republican women with very different views on abortion. Nancy Sternoff of the National Republican Coalition for Choice and Phyllis Schlafly of the Republican National Coalition for Life. Is this issue going to explode on this floor behind us?
Well, I don't think so. If they're smart, the convention will accept the vote of the platform committee, which voted 84-16 for the same strong pro-life plank that we've had in the last several conventions. The platform committee is very democratically elected. You have to go through a lot to get on the platform committee, one man and one woman from each state, and they considered it. They debated it all afternoon. The pro-abortionists presented all their arguments, and then they were outvoted. And I think that's the way it is. And I'm proud that the Republican Party stands up for life and for principle.
Ms. Schlafly says if your side is smart,
if our side is smart, we won't fight. Bernie, we have come to Houston in an effort to help unify this party. Republicans all over this country are looking for a platform and a party which will attract voters rather than repel them. The anti-choice plank in the platform will not bring thousands upon thousands of Republicans to the polls for the Republican ticket and for Republican candidates in the fall. This year is not like 1980 and 1984 and 1988. This is truly an unusual political season. Women's lives are threatened in a way that they were not before the Webster and Bray and Casey decisions, and men and women of conscience are speaking out as never before.
Well, what I think is that the pro-life plank has brought millions of the so-called Reagan Democrats, the independents, and pro-life Republicans to vote for our candidates. It's a winner. It helped Ronald Reagan for 2 times and George Bush. And I think the proof of that is in the fine speeches made by Governor Bob Casey of Pennsylvania, who has said that on the abortion issue, millions of Democrats have walked out of their party. And I say their loss is our gain. So I think you really gain. There are a few people who will vote pro-choice and cross party lines for that, although I don't hear much about Republican women for Clinton, but there are millions who will vote pro-life because the Republicans stand up for what they believe in, pro-life.
I think the test will be in November, Bernie, at the ballot box. We've already seen some trends in primaries that Republicans are unfortunately crossing over in greater numbers than we have seen in the past several elections. The president has an opportunity on Monday morning to show a tremendous amount of leadership by letting the delegates decide this issue. These delegates have come from far and wide across this country. They need the opportunity to express their views and to vote their conscience on this very volatile issue.
Do you have the votes to bring this to the floor for a fight?
You'll find out Monday morning.
Well, you see, the pro-choicers went into the state conventions and the caucuses all over the country, and they had a very hard time electing their delegates. Pro-life resolutions passed in most of the states. Pro-life delegates were elected. The pro-lifers went through the process, and all this time, the pro-abortion choicers have the media, they have some phony polls, but we have the warm bodies. Or as they say in Texas, they are all hat and no cattle. They just don't have the bodies. They were not able to attract enough people to support their cause.
Bernie, I come from Washington State, and the Washington State Republican Convention passed a platform which is so extreme, it is even harsher and more punitive and more restrictive than the platform passed here this week. It took less than 24 hours for 90% of the major Republican candidates for office at every level to repudiate and disavow the platform. Candidates are going to be running away from this platform rather than running with it and on it.
Barbara Bush says that abortion, pro or con, has no place in your party's platform.
Well,
your reactions to that briefly.
Our platform is written by elected delegates who are first of all elected in their state.
So she should butt out?
As I was.
So she should butt out?
Well, we have a process. She's not on the platform committee. She's entitled to her opinion, and we've known her opinion for some time. But don't you believe in the democratic process? I mean, you have to go through a whole lot to get elected to the platform committee.
So the First Lady's position on a controversial issue like this has no standing in your judgment?
She's a very admirable woman, but we have a process that devises the Republican platform, and the president has already sent word that he approves of it, he likes it, he will run on it, and he will win on it.
Your reaction to that series of questions?
The platform itself has a double standard. The preamble speaks to government getting out of the lives of citizens. I think in one phrase, there's one phrase which is authoritarian government. There is such a double standard here. The portion which calls for a constitutional amendment to ban abortion with not even exceptions for rape or incest is in direct contradiction to almost every other plank. And in terms of Mrs. Bush, I think it's terrific that Mrs. Bush has finally been given permission to speak her own views. I think it's admirable. But the president sets policy.
Are you going to vote for George Bush?
I think that's between me and the ballot box, Bernie.
Well,
my organization supports pro-choice Republican candidates, and we hope that the party will come on Monday to represent the majority view of Republicans in this country.
Well, you invited us to watch the action on Monday. We will, to see what happens on this controversial issue.
And I certainly am going to vote for George Bush.
You're going to vote for George Bush?
Absolutely.
And, of course, we'll be here all week to cover you Republicans in convention. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Bernie.
You're welcome. And